When application completion rates drop, something is off. Students aren't getting the support they need, and that's affecting your numbers. Enter Element 451's AI assistants. They step in where students struggle, offering real-time answers and advice, guiding them through every step. Learn how AI assistants can boost your enrollment outcomes. Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Question for you, young Timothy. Did your teachers ever tell you that you shouldn't use a calculator because you wouldn't have it with you at all times? Or did you already have, as a kid, did you already know that phones were going to have calculators and they were part of your everyday life?
Literal everyday existence. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if I ever had a teacher tell me that, but I'm pretty sure my mom did. Shout out to my mom. Hi, Mom. But yeah,
Hey,
I think
Tim's mom.
she just kind of said that like in passing one time. You probably ought to practice this because you never know when you won't have a calculator. And we're doing like long division.
Yeah. Which takes forever, and I assume that's kind of what these the high school math kids were doing, right? Like, this is anytime you write something down, studies show that you remember it more, or you're more likely to complete it. But we do have calculators in our pockets.
Welcome to the EduData Podcast, a podcast that serves as your weekly guide to the data driving higher education. We are your hosts. I'm Jamie Boggs.
And I'm Timothy Davis. Join us every Friday for weekly breakdowns of the most important data, trends, and topics in higher education.
The EduData Podcast is a part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
Hello and welcome to the EduData Podcast. I'm Timothy Davis, joined as always by Jamie Boggs. How are we doing today, Jamie?
Doing well, man. It's I don't know. We have contradictory data today, and I am way more excited about that than I should be, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an interesting topic that I think a lot of people will find interesting, and specifically our educators, folks that are actually in the classroom or involved with curriculum and programming and actual delivery of education might find this really interesting as we discuss how AI, specifically LLMs like ChatGPT, affect the learning environment and learning outcomes. Obviously, we're really early in some of the studies of this. It's going to take a while to better develop and grasp how this affects learning and what use cases AI is most appropriate and where it's inappropriate. But we have two kind of conflicting studies today that cover a couple of early studies, one from Harvard and another from the University of Pennsylvania. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so let me kind of introduce the one from Harvard here. We have a publication in the Harvard Gazette. In this study, they studied 194 students enrolled in a Physical Sciences 2 course. And in the study, they had some folks some folks were lectured in sort of an active learning environment, and the others had an AI tutor that was based on ChatGPT. It's actually called TeachGPT, using the OpenAI endpoint. It just has some additional prompts in there. There's actually a screenshot of it in this article here from the Harvard Gazette, which you can find in the show notes. It's pretty interesting looking. Like, it's got an example, and then you can kind of chat with AI against that example. So it's got like the context of what you're actually discussing there, which is pretty interesting. But the results of this found that from a pre-score, right, folks kind of baselined at about 2.8. But for the active learners, they advanced their score, improved after the active learning lecture to just above 3.5, where the folks that did an AI tutor advanced to like 4.33 or something like that. So markable increase, a statistically significant, numerically obvious increase in folks that that just had the active lecture versus folks that had the AI tutor. So that's a little bit contrasted to your study here, Jamie, from the University of Penn, where they found what?
Yeah, so this is a study including a group of almost 900, I think 839 Turkish high school students, and a study that was done for a math class that they had. And what they did here was they had three groups: a control group who was able to essentially read and study the old fashioned way and complete some practice problems and then do an exam. They had a group who had access to ChatGPT, just here it is, go with it. And then they had a group that had access to a GPT trained tutor for math. And what they found is that using ChatGPT increased accuracy on the practice problems. So those with ChatGPT scored 48% higher on practice problems, but did 17% worse on the exam. And the students who had the tutor did 127% better on the practice work, but didn't do any better than the traditionally studying students on the actual exam. So your study seems to indicate that this Teach GPT tutor had a positive impact on learning outcomes, and they talk a lot about engagement in that article as well. Whereas this study of high school students kind of indicates that maybe the students were a little too dependent on their AI friend.
Potentially, yeah. And I mean, again, we're comparing apples to oranges here. These studies are very different audiences, and I think very different delivery methods too. Even though they're both kind of powered by LLMs, I don't think we have a lot of clarity on the exact differences in the way that those LLMs provided responses and how students went about completing the practice problems versus the exam problems. But the first topic of this that I think that we could bring up is like the calculator dilemma, right? Where like, when if you take calculators away from students that are trying to do like calculus problems, yeah, obviously their scores are going to go down, right? Because you're having to do all that by hand, where the calculator, can keep track of numbers in a much superior way than the human brain can, or the human brain can sort of extrapolate onto a piece of paper,
Right.
right? That calculator is a huge aid. And so one of the issues, I guess, situational, right? When is it appropriate to use an AI assistant? When is it not? Because on the one hand, you want students to train their brains to think critically, to process information and solve problems, and just stretch and exercise our brains. But on the other hand, like in the real world, like is there anything preventing you from using the calculator? Is there anything
Right.
preventing you from keeping your textbook open and or using AI to solve the problems that you encounter?
Question for you, young Timothy. Did your teachers ever tell you that you shouldn't use a calculator because you wouldn't have it with you at all times, or did you already have as a kid? Did you already like know that phones were going to have calculators and they were part of your everyday life? Because
Literal everyday existence. Yeah, I'm not
okay,
sure. I don't know if I ever had a teacher tell me that, but I'm pretty sure my mom did. Shout out to my mom.
yeah,
Hi, mom. But yeah,
hey
I
Tim's
think
mom.
she just kind of said that like in passing one time. You probably ought to practice this because you never know when you won't have a calculator. And we're doing like long division.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Which takes forever, and I
yeah.
assume that's kind of what these the high school math kids were doing, right? Like this is anytime you write something down, studies show that you remember it more, or you're more likely to complete it. But we do have calculators in our pockets now. I will say, having grown up in an era where I wasn't allowed to use them and working in a math field, when I approach everyday problems, I feel like I'm ahead of people who did not grow up that way, in that just I can look at a situation and be like, oh, well, that's probably about 300 square feet, whereas they have to actually like count on their fingers and toes or get a calculator out. So I understand the importance of that deep learning, but we have calculators in our hands, and you know what? I have Chat GPT in my hand now all the time.
Yeah.
So where's the rub here in incorporating AI? And I think there also is something to be said here for the consistency in the way those tutor GPTs were trained. I think a great study would be to train them, train two tutor GPTs the same with these different subjects and with similar outcomes or what have you.
Yeah, so some of the ways that we can improve this research or do more research ourselves would be, one, use the exact same GPT tutor, right? Or if we have variations of it, use those intentionally across multiple studies or across larger cohorts, right? Larger populations of testing. And then also have a consistent like testing method. These were probably two different types of evaluations that these students faced. So where some of them maybe required, like with the Turkish high school students, maybe require them to like show their work or like write out the problems as opposed to just like select a multiple choice. Like those are very different, testing methodologies. So we need to be consistent in that application as well. But the other one that I think that we could talk about is difference in ages, right? High schoolers and college students like might not seem terribly different, but from a brain development perspective, they absolutely are. Right? Like high school students are still early in their prefrontal cortex development, where college students are a little bit more leveled out or approaching like the completion of their prefrontal cortex development. So just those like critical thinking and problem solving skills are much more advanced between the two cohorts. So maybe like in the college setting, those students were a little bit more prepared to ingest a new topic, right, with the assistance of AI, while still sort of retaining the knowledge that they got through the engagement with AI, rather than or in a better way than the high school students were, where the high school students maybe were still struggling to grasp the underlying concepts or having trouble, computing that much, right? We're still, maybe it's less appropriate to allow them to use AI as a crutch when we're trying to test their ability and push the limits of their brain to compute more information effectively.
Hey everyone, it's Timothy Davis. Element 451 is hosting the AI Engage Summit on October 29th and 30th. This free virtual event is going to feature many of your favorite Enrollify creators and is going to explore AI's impact on student engagement, enrollment marketing, and institutional success. Learn how to tap into the power of AI to turn data into actionable insights, utilize predictive analytics, and monitor and support student performance. Plus, you can hear directly from current students on how AI is influencing their engagement in campus life. So don't miss Jamie and I's session, Predictive Analytics in Action, How Element 451 Drives Student Success with AI-Powered Insights, on October 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern. The AI Engage Summit is your guide to understanding and applying AI at your school. Registration is free, so visit element451.com to save your spot. All right, now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, that, and I don't know the system of Turkish education for pre-university, but in America, kids are forced to go to high school, and I think for the most part, it's I can imagine them using this Chat GPT and just saying, "What is the answer to this question?" and it gives it back, and obviously, you're not learning anything there.
Yeah. Even if the GPT like spells out, here's step 1 of solving this, step 2, step 3, right? Like if you're moving quickly, you're just skimming that stuff. You're not really internalizing it. Same problem with a textbook. Like if you just look at the back of the textbook for the answer as opposed to working through the problem, right? You don't take away the effects of actually doing the work.
And I think the students in college, especially at Harvard, you go there knowing it's going to be hard and you're going to have to learn, and you're willing to be there. So I think that's not only the cognitive development, but the approach of how I need to do on this assignment differs between these two studies as well. And I would love to. They haven't. Harvard has not published their study. You can download this paper from the University of Pennsylvania, but it's not official. I think you can download a draft right now. I wonder what that. I mentioned the training earlier, but I could see a Chat GPT that's set up to where if I ask you, I need to find the area of the square that has these sides or whatever, and Chat GPT saying, well, what is the formula for area? And you have to like actually walking you through the process of doing it. like forcing you to do the pen and paper stuff with ChatGPT, but it's also a guide there so you don't forget steps.
Yeah, talking you through it like an instructor might. The other thing that the Harvard study brings up is accuracy of the AI tutor, right? So this is where I'm not sure, maybe there's a similar discussion in the Turkish study. You're the one looking at that one. But like when we're just encountering an LLM or asking questions of an LLM, point blank, if you go straight to ChatGPT and ask it, a question about engineering or physics too, or whatever, right? It's going to pull from its general knowledge, right? And its general knowledge is generally going to be pretty good, but it might hallucinate some of its answers, right? So if you're asking it to sort of blend information or things like that, like you can see, hallucinated answers where it just kind of like puts some words together. Because again, that's all LLMs are doing. LLMs are not magic. They are just math predicting the most appropriate words that go together to form an English sentence. And they're doing that at a really high scale, having been trained on, trillions and trillions of word and sentence combinations across lots of different documents. So it's always just making up the information. But it sounds like what they did with the Harvard study here in this particular AI tutor is they used probably like a retrieval augmented generation model. And that's kind of the industry standard right now when you want AI to always produce accurate results, right? Is basically what you tell it is instead of making up the answer or just using its general knowledge first, you have it sort of scan a corpus of relevant text for the answer and then sort of summarize its findings, as opposed to just sort of coming up with its own answer in a sort of one-shot situation. So what that kind of looks like is you upload maybe a PDF or a big Word document to a vectorized database, which basically takes all of the letters and word combinations and converts them into numbers, right? So like big, long decimal numbers. And then the AI basically does the same thing, and that's called tokenization. You input your prompt, and it looks at the words of your prompt, and it maybe combines that with like what we call like a system prompt that's telling it how to behave. So you're a tutor, you're covering this topic, students may ask you about A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Use their prompt and the system prompt to look through this text of vectorized information for like matching numerical values. And that's how it kind of creates those what we call like semantic relationships. Wow, I'm really just breaking down LLMs right now, and hopefully
no, this is important. It's important to know that it's not magic. We did a session that I may not have come out yet for the AI Engage Summit where we noted we're nerds, not wizards. Like this is not magic stuff. Machine learning, AI. This is a computer process that follows a process, and it engages. It's as good as what it's built on, right?
Right. But the importance of accuracy in AI tutors for this study and for educators in general is you don't want AI just giving your students bad information, right? Because then they're gonna not do good on the tests anyway, right? So if you want them to kind of complete a mathematical process, series of steps, or you want them to analyze a text, and extract the themes and symbolism, or things like that in a specific way. Maybe just leaving that up to the AI, especially a unaugmented AI, just like a normal ChatGPT chat, is maybe not the best way to go about that because they could learn how to do something incorrectly.
Yeah.
Right. So stuff like that. So
yeah, well, in the Turkish study, that's exactly what they did. They gave their tutor GPT the answers essentially to the practice questions. It provided them with they provided the model, the GPT, with common wrong answers so that it could follow up with students on why they were wrong. And it didn't directly give them the answer. It did guide them through a step by step, and they performed 127% better on those practice problems, but no better. There really wasn't a drop off, but the same as regular studying on the exam.
I think the last thing that we could talk about in this, and there's a lot in both of these studies, so definitely go check those out and maybe leave us a comment on LinkedIn on the show post, or maybe shoot us a direct message there. We'd love to talk and interact and discuss these things further. But the last thing that I think we could talk about is our sort of performance metrics, right? We're our education system is really dependent on tests and evaluations, right?
Yep.
And we love getting, a numerical or letter-based representation of how well a student knows a particular topic. And so, this Harvard study at least sort of positions AI tutors against what it's calling like an active learning lecture, right? Where a human lecturer talks through a problem, talks through a topic with a cohort of students, and they talk to each other, sort of things. They spell out how that sort of works in their study. So they're positioning that against an AI tutor. And I think the absolute worst conclusion you could come to, looking at the Harvard study at least, is going, oh, AI is better than lectures, right? Because they perform better on the test.
Yes.
Right. So when
agree.
I think that's a terrible conclusion.
Yes, that's not what we want them to walk away with, and that's not what we want anybody believing, that an AI tutor can completely replace engaging in material with experts and peers.
Yeah, because what that effectively does is that says, well, the test is the best representation of a student's knowledge and competency and ability, right? Where the lecture is going to provide a rich social environment where people collaborate together. The AI tutor may produce better results for, the multiple choice test, but the lecture and the social interaction there, what that accomplishes beyond just what's represented on the test, I think is much more important and beneficial, right? One of the key value propositions of higher education is learning with your peers, engaging with your professors, becoming part of an educational academic community. The worst conclusion is that AI tutors are the superior instruction delivery methods.
And I think our conclusion here today is just that more studies need to be done. I'm excited that people are looking to use AI in these ways, but I think we need to continue to do studies and assess how it's working and how it can augment or supplement certain pieces of the way we've always done things.
Hope you enjoyed spending some time with us this morning as you listen to the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us. Again, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and leave us a review here on the show. I'd love to know your thoughts. So see you in the next one. Have a great weekend if you're listening to this on Friday.
The EduData podcast is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month. We've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional.
Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Artis Cadu, Dustin Ramsdale, Jeremy Tiers, and so many of your other favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.